Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the Armchair Punditz again. It's been a long time. We're back on air. We're fiddling with some of the buttons here to make sure that you can hear us. Hopefully you can hear us, inshallah. Jazakallah to our technical assistant and the MD of the radio station at the same time. Jazakallah. But yeah, assalamu alaikum, inshallah. Ramazan Mubarak, a very, very, very belated Ramazan Mubarak from the Pundits. We're 18, 19, 20 days into Ramazan. I won't go into the exact date. We know there's a bit of ikhtilaf in the various communities. And the last thing I want to do is start the Pundit show and get us all into trouble. So we leave it there, inshallah. As I said, Ramazan Mubarak from us, inshallah. We make dua that Allah Azza wa Jal accepts our fasting, He accepts your fasting, inshallah, that He allows us to take full benefit in this blessed month of Ramadan, inshallah. He grants every Muslim, this ummah, success, inshallah. So obviously Ramadan is the month of abstention, so abstaining from food and drink and so forth, and it looks like the Armchair Pundits have been abstinent, and we have very good cause and reason for that, and actually we'll get into that a bit later on, inshallah, and discuss where the focus has been for some of the brothers who are normally here. I do have with me a very regular Pundit in the form of Shabaz, alhamdulillah, who's here, and of course you could say this is a bit of a Ramadan special show. I mean, it's not like the Christmas specials, because Christmas specials, when you're looking at it on TV, you're listening in, normally it's an extended show and they have some fantastic special features. Well, Ramadan special is a little bit different in the sense that instead of extended, it may be a slightly shorter show, but when it comes to special features, what can I say? We are honoured today. It's fantastic. The red carpet treatment, because we have a special guest Armchair Pundit in the form of Dr. Let me just say that again. Dr. Amar Latif. So if there's any aunties and uncles out there, you heard it right. He's a genuine live doctor here, mashallah. And let's face it, I mean, some of us here, myself, very much the case, you know, a bit of a letdown really in the family, because you have to be either a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, right? So for the younger generation, that's a doctor, engineer and lawyer. And let's just say it didn't quite happen. So mashallah, by Dr. Amar Latif being here, the average intellectual level of the pundits has just shot up dramatically, mashallah. But on a serious note, inshallah, let me bring the pundits in so they can give salam. So assalamu alaikum to Shabaz and to Dr. Amir.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah, guys. Okay, so as I said, we've got a reasonably packed show, even if we're only going to be on for about 45 minutes today, inshallah.
Well, can I say that's probably the best introduction I've ever had?
Jazakallah.
If you want to take up a job as my PA, then alhamdulillah, there's a job there going there for you, mashallah.
Jazakallah. I do try and please you, so alhamdulillah, mashallah.
I'll say in all seriousness, Ramadan Mubarak to all the listeners. It's good to be on air with the Reading crowd, alhamdulillah. As you know, we the pundits come from Oxford, alhamdulillah. And although I am a doctor, we can just refer to me as Amir. Sometimes it's good to remember your station in life, and alhamdulillah, we all have skills and different benefits to the community, and I'm sure everyone here, everyone in listening even, does have a skill set that they can bring. So alhamdulillah, it's a privilege to be here and live on air, and it's a privilege to be given this opportunity to speak with you all, and we'll go through a few things with Brother Muhammad and Shabaz, inshallah.
Jazakallah, Amir. And Shabaz, you give salam, inshallah, to the audience as well.
To all the listeners in Reading. I feel a bit lonely today without my pundit, Amber. I'm sure Dr. Amir is just as equal as him.
Inshallah.
Make as much noise as Amber.
Yes, large boots to fill. And
yeah, very large boots.
Yeah, but we mean that metaphorically, so if Amber's listening, you know, don't take that the wrong way, Akhi. But inshallah, let's press on, inshallah. So just very quickly, because it has been such a long time, I'm sure you know the format by now, but the Armchair Pundits is really all about us guys having a discussion on pretty much every and anything. And we are pundits in the armchair sense. The name gives it away, so we'll be giving our opinions. You may or may not disagree, and that's exactly why you have the opportunity to get involved if you like. So if you want to phone into the studio, you can do that, and the number to call on in is 0118 975 8300. That's 0118 975 8300. If you want to text us, again, that option is there for you, 07909 567 527. And just a word before we get cracking with some of the topics today, inshallah. We do have an email address for you, and that's really for you to submit any kind of feedback that you have, to give us your suggestions, give us any nasiya, inshallah. And it's a very easy email address to remember. Armchair Punditz, that's all one word. Armchair Punditz with a Z. Because we're cool. About that. Yeah, we're cool. Exactly. Armchair Punditz at gmail.com. So please let the floodgates open and let us have your suggestions, inshallah. Okay, so what's the discussion going to be about today? Well, very quickly, I mentioned we'd kind of been off air for a while, and one of the reasons was the guys, the pundits, been very busy in Oxford with various events. various initiatives that they've been undertaking. So I'm going to be speaking to Shabazz and Dr. Amir because they are heavily involved in an organisation.
Bro, seriously, let's just call it Amir. We got very uncomfortable.
I have to emphasize the doctor, okay? Because this gives the show some immediate respect.
Muhammad, in all seriousness, we'll get the aunties starting to queue up outside.
There's going to be a queue outside.
My mum's going to give strict instructions that I need to come back from Reading, not married.
Subhanallah, okay. Well, there you go. I've given the numbers out now, so it's too late. So I'll give you if you're there, but let's not go down that route, inshallah. Okay, so Amir, Shabazz, I'll be speaking to them, inshallah, regarding the organisation, regarding what they're doing. And this is a fairly new organisation. It's called Oxford Charity Fund Days. And basically, I'm going to leave it at that and throw that over to Shabazz and Amir. So guys, Oxford Charity Fund Days, tell the audience today how it started, where the idea came from, what you guys are looking to achieve with this organisation. So whoever wants to take that first, inshallah.
Well, I'll start, inshallah. So the organisation's been running in its totality for a couple of years, although under the name of Oxford Charity Fund Days for just over a year or so. And really it started after the Pakistan floods, which devastated the country approximately 2 years ago. And there's a brother, Shabazz's brother actually, is Shujat Hussain, who, mashallah, had this very great idea after the floods that he wanted to do something to help the suffering in Pakistan and help the people there. And rather than just like the rest of us just say, we need to do something and have a lot of talk and not actually achieve anything, the brother, mashallah, he actually went to that extra effort and he organised a football tournament in Oxford. It was just outside Oxford actually, in a place called Kidlington. And we had about 22 teams enter that. The teams mainly from within the community, but we had some Kurdish communities. We had the police enter a team. We had a few different teams enter there, alhamdulillah. And came to last summer and we wanted to repeat it. And at that stage, Shujat opened the door, tried to get more people involved. And we had a few brainstorming ideas beforehand, and we thought rather than just having a football tournament, actually we want to make it a bit more of a community event, a bit more of a family day, family type event, not just for brothers or men in their early 20s or 30s. So then we came up with a fun day alongside the football tournament. And that took the form, which was what we did last year. At the time, we still wanted to do something for the people in Pakistan, so we split the money last year between split it in half between the Eidi Foundation in Pakistan, and the other half went to the local children's hospital in Oxford. It's called the John Radcliffe Children's Hospital. Some of you may have heard of it. And alhamdulillah, it was very successful. We raised a decent amount of money. I think it's about £7,500, £8,000 last year. We had about 1,000 people come to our event, and it was, I think, a relative success. I think you guys would agree. Obviously, we made mistakes along the way. I don't think you ever do anything in life without making mistakes and realizing that actually there are things that you could have done better, or there's things that you tried and you thought, you know what, let's try this, let's see if it works, and then actually it just fell flat on its face and it didn't work at all. So then we had another one this year, alhamdulillah. So when was it? The 8th of July, wasn't it? It's a couple of
July, week before Rosa.
Week before Rosa, that's true. So and this time we thought as well, because so there's a group of about 6 of us who are the core organisers, and we thought actually this time we want to do it exclusively for the community in Oxford, the local community. And so what we did was we went for a local children's hospice, a disabled children's hospice, something called Helen and Douglas House. It's the first children's hospice in the whole of the UK actually. And the children's hospice, what that means is actually when you have a disabled child, actually it's a big strain on the family, for the parents, the siblings, because you can't go about your normal life. You have to actually incorporate the care of the child into that, and it can be very stressful. And what they allow is for children and their families to come in and get a bit of rest. So the children will be admitted, and the families can get some rest. So alhamdulillah, we thought it was a very worthy cause. So we did a similar format, football tournament and a fun day. We expanded the fun day a bit with the help of our sponsors, and alhamdulillah, and we then had a slightly. Again, the football tournament itself has evolved into about 32 teams. This year we had 25. Last year we had 32, but that's kind of a big football tournament. If you look at most football tournaments in the region, there are about 16 teams or so. So we're doing very well on that front. And then we had 1,500 people. Alhamdulillah, it was absolutely amazing. We were astonished by the turnout. We had people from the Muslim community, the non-Muslim community, and I think that was probably the most pleasing element, that we seem to have reached out to the non-Muslim community and have them come on board. We're still in the very final final stages of just getting the final few pledges, the very final few stages, although it's a month down the line. Unfortunately, the way the money comes into us is from several different avenues, and it takes a while. So very shortly we'll announce our target. We're hoping it's in the region of £7,000 again, inshallah, but we'll announce that very shortly. And I guess that's where the fun day and the name has come from, although we're starting to evolve into different activities, as we'll talk about in a little while.
Sure, mashallah. Jazakallah. So that sounds like a fantastic initiative, inshallah. Quick question for you guys on that. So Jazakallah for the recap. And I'm sure the audience will certainly be able to relate to John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, and doing some very good work there, inshallah. Also AD Foundation. So AD Foundation, as everyone knows, have been doing some sterling work in Pakistan for many, many years and are very trusted within the Pakistani community and the Asian community. Helen and Douglas House, that's interesting. What was the thinking, guys, behind choosing that particular charity? I mean, did you have a process that you went through? Did they approach you? Did you approach them? Was there any fundamental reasons why you decided to go with Helen and Douglas House this year?
The reason there were a few charities that were shortlisted. As you know, there's many causes that we can help, but I think the main reason we went for Helen and Douglas House because it's a local charity, especially to the area that the event was held in. It's only a couple of miles from where we held the fun day. They were hands-on from the start.
Okay.
They always got involved in all aspects of the fun day and football tournament. Obviously, there's some things as Muslims we can't incorporate into a fun day, and they were very accommodating of that as well. So we can only say good things about them so far.
Is it fair to say that that's? I mean, when you look at something like the hospital, or you look at AD Foundation and the work they're doing, that is very, if you like, for want of a better word, very standard kind of charity work, the kind of thing that most people relate to. What I find interesting about your choice of Helen and Douglas House is, as you described, Ahmad, actually, in your brief initially, was that it seems like a very specific type of work, and it's almost as if the feeling I get is it's not something that maybe the Muslim community is attuned to. So was that another factor that perhaps it was good to raise that awareness within the Muslim community that there is some very good work going on, even if it is perhaps not the traditional type of charity they normally engage with?
Absolutely, and if you look at Helen Douglas House, actually they have a large number of people, and as I said, it was the first ever children's hospice within the UK. This year they actually celebrated their 30th anniversary, and they've since incorporated something called Douglas House, which is looking at adolescents and getting them involved. So actually they do some very valuable work. We've got a lot of Muslims actually go through there. A lot of disabled children from Muslim families actually use their avenues, and we knew one of the brothers who actually wanted to have or had a cousin who was had been using Helen Douglas House's facilities before. Unfortunately, he passed away. So actually, it's one of those charities which has a very important function, but it seems to be that it's not known until actually you're in that situation. So
I think so, definitely.
Absolutely.
A lot of our community probably have not heard of the name, but they probably didn't realise what they actually do. So it's
but
good
when you're stuck, then they're the ones.
They're the ones that help. Yeah.
So we thought it's a very worthy charity, and I think one of the other things we want to do is obviously the people organising it, alhamdulillah, we're all Muslims. But actually, what we wanted to do is we wanted to organise a charity day, which at the end of it we're Muslims, but we didn't want to do a Muslim-specific event. So we think it's very important within this day and age to reach out to the non-Muslim community and say, you know what, we're Muslims, we live in Britain, but actually this is our home, and of course we'll remember causes like Pakistan, Palestine, Chechnya, and so forth, and they're very close to our hearts, and certainly with some of what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, there's a lot of Muslims in need as well. But actually charity starts at home, and so we have to remember that the very local community that we live in, they have a place in our hearts as well. And so what we try to do is we try to say, okay, this is a charity which might not be naturally we might not naturally think of as charity that we should be giving money to, but they have a very important role. And actually I think that was quite evident in terms of the turnout that we had. We had a lot of Muslims come to the event, we had a lot of Muslims, and it was very good to see. I don't like the word integration specifically. There's a lot of negative connotations
to that there,
absolutely, but the whole idea that actually the two communities came together and they mixed well, so that was very good to see as well. And I think that's one of the things that we'd like to do from one of our aims is actually to bridge out to different communities and to show that, okay, we might be Muslims, we might have, well, some of us might have different skin colour, not everyone, not all Muslims do, we might look slightly weird, we might act in certain ways and have certain practices which are alien to the other community, but actually at the very center of what we believe are very common human values, and this is our way of reaching out to them. Actually,
you said we might look slightly weird, so do I dare go down that avenue of discussing what you mean? No, I won't go down there, but no, just look at that. From what it sounds like, then it seems like there is a lot of very hard work that's gone into also charity fund days, the different things that you've done, and I can imagine that having a 32-team football tournament, having so many different teams from the local area being involved, managing that in itself is difficult, and to combine that with the different activities for, families and kids to come and enjoy, it is a big task. So I wanted to ask you very quickly, I mean, as far as I know, that's not necessarily the first fund day that's happened in that region within Oxford, but certainly it seems like the first one that's been organised by the Muslim community generally. And my question really will be, did you feel, and I think we can probably all guess the answer here, that it required a pretty big sacrifice on your part in terms of time and effort to get that organised? And in terms of any lessons that you've learned, what were the main challenges, what were the issues that you had to confront? Is there anything that you pass on to other people that may be looking to do something similar in other communities? What comes to mind when I mention that? Any advice that you can give?
Well, apparently, according to you guys, although I'm a doctor, I do no work, so it didn't require much of a sacrifice on my part, according to you guys. But in all seriousness, alhamdulillah, we were all full-time working individuals, and some of us have families, not all of us, but some of us have families, young children. We all have a larger, family in terms of our parents and siblings and so forth. And trying to organize a fun day, although when you think about it, you think what you do is you organize a few brothers to come together in a football tournament, and then what you do is you put out the word, get a few more teams in, you bring a bounce castle down, and then have that on the side and a bit of food, and you think actually it's not that much effort.
No,
and I think we all underestimated, certainly the first time we did it, we all thought it wasn't going to take much effort.
Yeah. I think, to quote football again, as Roberto Mancini keeps saying in the newspapers as well, to do something once and win it is easy. To do it again and win it is that little bit harder.
Oh, Wajiba, what great question.
Wow, fantastic. We're already getting onto the quotes here, mashallah. Okay, that's very good news, inshallah. And just go back a little bit, you mentioned a lot of people turned up to the event that you guys did, which is very good, inshallah, and obviously coming from different backgrounds, so that's fantastic as well. After the event itself, I mean, that's obviously, people turned up, so they kind of voted with their feet by coming on the day, even though I think in the event you did last month, there was some rain involved as well, but people still came out and enjoyed the day.
It's amazing, just on that rain issue, it's amazing, subhanAllah. Up until the run-up of the whole week, it was raining, and you're looking at the phone and you're
I've never been on the BBC website more times in that week.
Checking the weather every day, every hour.
It's not very reliable, Shabazz, believe me. Not that I want to have a slight on the BBC by anyway, but
it started off that week having 20% chance of rain. I was looking at it, like I said, very regularly. By the end, I think it was saying 70% chance of rain, and we got very lucky, alhamdulillah. The fun day in football ran from I think 11 to 5, and about 11 o'clock the rain stopped, the sun came out, it was beautiful weather, alhamdulillah. And then just as the final was being played at the very end, started chucking it down.
SubhanAllah.
The actual fun day and the majority of the tournament was in very good.
What can you say about the pundits? That's all I can say, mashallah. No, but alhamdulillah. But that's good news, inshallah. But the question I had for you guys was, okay, so that's on the day, okay, things alhamdulillah went very smoothly, good reaction from people. Has there been any specific feedback from the community? And here I don't mean the community specifically, the Muslim community, but generally after the event. So have people come up to you and said, yes, it was very good, we need to do this again? Has there been constructive criticism? Anything that you have heard? Or is it still early days in a way because we're straight into Ramadan? And
I think we've had a lot of positive feedback actually from this year and last, and it surprises me actually at the level of how we had quite a bit of press publicity. Obviously here in Reading they don't get the local paper that we do in Oxford, but Oxford Mail, you can always look on the website and see we had quite a good bit of publicity beforehand and after, and it's amazing. You think in a big group photo you're like a little one part of maybe like 15 people in the photo, and you think, oh, no one's ever going to recognize me. And literally I was getting stopped. There's someone who lives maybe 2 minutes away from me, someone I've never met before, and they stopped me and they said, this was on the morning of the fun day, and they said, oh, you're doing a fun day today, right?
Wow.
So maybe it's the topi that gives it away.
Did you sign an autograph, Doc? I mean, this is what happens when you're a doctor, you see. Me and Shabazz, we can only dream of these things. No one stops us. If they stop us, it's normally for the wrong reasons, like, maybe we get a parking ticket or something, subhanAllah. But that's
I think
fantastic.
we did get a lot of positive feedback, and also returning to last year, we had a local radio station, non-Muslim radio station, involved in the tournament, in the fun day. And actually, I remember speaking to the people involved there who came to the fun day. They said, actually, this is one of the better fun days that we've been to in the region. I know the Lord Lieutenant of Oxford, they emailed us and just gave their congratulations that we had such a successful event. We've heard from the charity when they came that actually it was a very successful event, and obviously they have a big portfolio of different types of events.
They do, yeah.
So this is obviously something that's quite
Also, I think people were wowed by the fact that by how much we've actually done on that day.
absolutely.
Just people expect it now, and which is a good thing actually. It means that we can only get bigger and better as well.
And we held it at local school actually, and it's funny because there was a PE teacher who came in. He was doing something. It was a Sunday, and it was I think the holidays had not started by then, so he was just in at the weekend. And he went to the caretaker and he said, "Wow, this is amazing. Why can't we do this for our kids?"
That's great.
In terms of the school kids, and that's I think a lot of feedback like that. Alhamdulillah, it gives you a lot of confidence that you're starting to make a name for yourself. And inshallah, once the name's there, and once people know that the format's there, and they know what to expect, they know to expect a certain level of professionalism. I wouldn't say we're completely professional.
No, but I think you guys, as you said, you're learning from the experience, inshallah. Everyone does. And feedback's very good. And actually, let me give you some feedback. So I saw the photos of the event. I wasn't there on the day itself. And I would just love to know who was responsible for the garish yellow T-shirts for the volunteers. That's the feedback. We've got to change that colour, guys. But no, it stands out. Okay, alhamdulillah. And I'm joking aside.
Brand, as they say.
And
Yeah, exactly.
I've still got mine at home actually.
You have it.
He still has one.
MashaAllah, there you go. Okay, but joking aside, okay, so in all seriousness, that's fantastic. Jazakallah for sharing that with us, guys. So the question for you pundits now is, in terms of OCFD, what is next? What's in the pipeline?
Well, I'll take that, inshallah. So I think annually we're going to turn the football tournament and the fun day to an annual event, inshallah. So that'll become something that's on the map for local events, and we're going to start branching out to the wider community, and then also other localities as well. So try and get people from Reading involved, people from Banbury and Slough and so forth. And even this year, actually, we had teams come into the tournament from as far away as Slough, Banbury and so forth. So that's one step. But then I think we want to start branching out into other events as well. And one of the things that we had said when, although we specifically made a decision to choose a non-Muslim charity this time around, one of the comments we had from the Muslim community was that, it'd be nice to see you doing something for the Muslim community. And we said to them, look, we haven't forgotten the Muslim community, they're still very much in our hearts. And so our very next event is actually coming up this Monday, inshallah. So it's a charity iftar for the brothers and sisters in Syria. As we all know, there's a lot of fighting that's happening there, and whatever we think politically, I'm sure we all have very strong views on that, but actually there's a lot of very innocent people caught up in the middle, and this is always one of the unfortunate side effects of war. And these brothers and sisters, they're going through Ramadan as well. They're trying to keep their fast, and I think it's very touching when we talk to non-Muslims and we say to people, why do we fast? And one of the things we always say is, we fast because it teaches us about how poor people know where to eat.
Yep.
And actually, I remember there was a sheikh who said to me a few years ago, he said, actually, it's nothing. It gives you a taster, but it doesn't give you the whole experience, because when it comes to 8 o'clock and iftar is at 8:45 and you're counting it down. I think it's a bit later here in Reading. Actually, I think they should all move to Oxford, get it slightly. But they, there's 45 minutes to go and you're hungry, but in 45 minutes time, well, actually, Mum's made some samosa pakore, some biryani and so forth, and you think, actually, in 45 minutes I'm going to be well fed.
Yeah.
It's very different to have that, and otherwise, and the alternative to that a lot of people in the world, and particularly those in Syria who are suffering at the moment, have, which it comes to the time for iftar, and they think, subhanAllah, if we have something to just break our fast with, that'll be sufficient. And you can't imagine the stress that a lot of parents are going through, knowing that they can't provide for their children and so forth. So our event really is looking at the brothers and sisters in Syria. So it's a charity iftar.
Okay.
We're also having some Islamic talks. It'll be the last 10 days, regardless of which day you started. It'll be the last 10 days. So we'll also have some talks on the power of Laylatul Qadr.
MashaAllah.
Talk on the Quran, inshallah. And then there's a nasheed artist, Umar Isa.
Okay.
You can YouTube him, Isa spelled ESA, and he's coming down all the way from London.
That's very good, mashallah, mashallah.
And we're hoping, we've we've got our own a restaurant who we've managed to negotiate with, and they're giving us a very generous deal. And we'll have people coming from hopefully the local community, but also wider afield, and it should be a great event, inshallah.
So I'm sold. So I mean, so how do I get a ticket for this event? Because I assume it's ticketed, obviously. So what are the prices, and do we have any kind of contact details? And actually, very quickly, so just to remind the audience of what Ahmed said and Shabazz have said. So next Monday, the 13th, inshallah. I believe you said it's around about 6:30 in the evening. Is that correct?
That's right. So the event itself starts at 6:45, but the doors will open at 6:30 at the venue, and that's to allow us to do the speeches and the nasheed artists and a bit of a charity auction beforehand,
right,
so that people can come in, enjoy that, pass the last few hours knowing, hopefully keeping them distracted from their hunger. And then
in the restaurant now.
Surrounded by food. Good luck, guys, with that. But, no, but 100 and 6:30, so doors open 6:30. So guys, if you're listening, 6:30 is normal timing, not Pakistani time, please. So if you are looking to come to this event, and please do, I mean, what Brother Ahmed has said, what Shabazz have said, there are any number of situations around the world in terms of the Ummah, and even from beyond the Ummah, situations where people are living in poverty, they're struggling. This Ramadan, you can literally look at places like Burma, where there's some horrific issues there, massacres and so forth happening, and maybe not being reported too much in the mainstream media. Certainly in Syria, as Dr. Ahmed has said, and I remember actually looking on some of the news websites, and you see pictures of some of the fighters, and they're sitting down to open their fast, to have iftar, and a stack of Kalashnikovs and rifles nearby, and some horrific images of what's going on in Syria in terms of the damage from the fighting and the bombs and so forth. So what the brothers are doing, I think it's a fantastic initiative, inshallah. They're obviously looking to raise as much money as they can from a humanitarian perspective to help those families, those children, those who've been dispossessed, the elderly. And I believe there's a specific charity that you guys are raising money for who are on the ground in Syria. Do you have any details of that charity to hand?
That's right. There's a charity which originated from the Midlands. I think they're based in Nottingham, although they're spread across most of the Midlands, called Hand in Hand for Syria. You can look up their website. It's www.handinhandforsyria, so as you would spell it, all one word, handinhandforsyria.org.uk. And they're, as I said, Midlands-based charity. I know some of the brothers from that charity, and unfortunately their uncle was killed in the recent fighting, and they've gone out there and they've raised a lot of money already, alhamdulillah. They've gone out there, given humanitarian help to people within Syria. And that's a charity we've nominated because we've got that personal connection. We know some of the brothers involved with it, and we know that we can vouch for their integrity. So that's a charity we've got in mind, and we think it's a very worthy cause, inshallah. And I should have said, in terms of also the amount we're trying to raise, I don't think necessarily is the key. It's just really trying to also raise publicity.
Yeah, definitely. So the awareness is a lot of the event as well. Exactly. Trying to raise as much awareness as we can.
Exactly, and actually, if you see some of the footage, which although we see it on the news, and it's very easy to just see from some of the airstrikes and so forth, when you see some of the suffering on the ground, it makes you realise that in this month we might be struggling on a daily basis, might be struggling going to work and so forth, but actually the struggling of our brothers and sisters in Syria is at a much greater level. And obviously the Hadith of Prophet ﷺ, which is one part of the Ummah is harmed in any way. Well, actually we're like a body, and the rest of us are harmed, and so it's important in this time. And obviously at the end of the day, we're in the month of Ramadan, and we should always remember those less fortunate than ourselves. And giving in charity is obviously always something that a lot of brothers and sisters are very generous in doing. And there's nothing wrong, I don't think, in trying to give more charity in Ramadan. At the end of the day, we all have the values towards giving help to our brothers and sisters, and obviously giving in Ramadan, obviously you get more barakah for that, and more thawab, and I don't think there's any selfishness in doing that. That's one of the reasons why you have that in Ramadan, to allow you to give more, because actually you get more reward for that. Well, that's fine actually. If this is one of the incentives to make you give more to charity, well then let that be, inshallah.
I think so. Jazakallah khair, inshallah. And I can only echo what you've said. So any of the listeners, inshallah, if you are free on Monday the 13th in the evening, then Oxford is not a million miles from here. Maybe it's a 45-minute journey, inshallah.
You
can do it in 30 if you drive like some brothers do. I won't mention names here. So please do try. If you're not free, then try and get free, because as the brothers have said, inshallah, this is a very, very noble cause. There are, of course, other events that are happening nationally. So alhamdulillah, as always, there is goodness in this ummah. People are realizing the pain and suffering in Syria and in other areas as well. But to have an event so close in Oxford, inshallah, where the brothers have obviously put a lot of effort into, they put a very nice agenda together. They mentioned the nasheeds from Brother Umar Isa, who I believe is an up-and-coming nasheed artist, and you may well know him in Reading. I believe he may have performed it previously as well. There have some very nice talks from a couple of speakers, reminders regarding Ramadan, Laylatul Qadr, etc. So these are very nice things, and as the brothers have said, and I want to emphasize this point, inshallah, Ramadan, the month of fasting, the month of closeness to Allah Azza wa Jalla, inshallah, the chance to seek that extra barakah, to seek that extra reward, inshallah, for our actions. And that's really what it's about, because, we can think about an event like this and think about the fact that we pay £20 for a ticket, and, let's face it, if we're very candid with you, yes, there are very straitened economic times, so it's not easy for everyone. The Muslim community is no exception, inshallah, recession, talk, all kinds of problems and issues. But let's put that into context, because £20 is something that we can spend on a couple of pizzas, okay? And here just to pay £20 inshallah to go along, and the tangible result of that is to have this fantastic evening inshallah ta'ala, to listen to the talks, listen to the nasheeds, to also have a chance to bid in an auction, which I think the guys mentioned as well, and I'm sure there'll be some very good artifacts lined up. But the intangible really is, as the pundits have said, is really in the akhirah inshallah, when that reward is multiplied, on the day when we stand, each one of us with no intercessor, essentially with our actions the only thing before us, and we stand for Allah Azza wa Jal, and we account, and that should be a very vivid reality for us, as I'm sure it is. So this is a perfect time, inshallah, Ramazan. It's the month where we compete amongst each other in the pious deeds of the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentioned to us that we should really compete in these deeds, in the good deeds. So we've heard the details, inshallah. And do we have, just very quickly in case we forget later on, do we have in terms of purchasing tickets, guys, do you have a contact name and number that people can reach out to? And we'll try and repeat that at the end as well, but is there somebody that...
Absolutely. Yeah. So I should just add, in terms of the event itself, there'll be segregated seating for brothers and sisters as well. If some of the listeners are wondering, there'll also be provisions for Maghrib Salah, and then after that we've actually got a buffet dinner, eat and drink as much as you want, and it's for the price of £20 per head for adults, and under 12s, because they tend to eat a little bit less, it's only £10 a head. And actually, if people want to bring their families along, I know there's a lot of people in Oxford where they're bringing their families along and they're making a bit of an evening of it, then inshallah that would be that's something that we would like to encourage, inshallah. So the actual ways of getting tickets, actually, you can, the brother Shajat Hussein, who I mentioned earlier, who'd originally come up with the idea of the whole charity, and actually he's kind of our main ticket salesperson, seems to be our lead ticket sales person, and I'll give you his telephone number out on there. I'm sure he won't mind. No prank calling, guys, but his telephone number is
trust the community, inshallah.
Exactly, inshallah. So his number is 07852 235 242. I'll give you that number again. It's 07852 235 242. The brother's name is Shajat Hussein. If you speak to him and just say, look, I heard the pundits on air, I'd like some, even if you want more information and you want to ask him a little bit more detail, then you can do that. Otherwise you can reserve your tickets and so forth. The only thing we would say is that we have a limited number of seating in the restaurant, because obviously there's a capacity of just over 100 seats or so pre-booking is essential. What we don't want people to do is think, oh, we'd like to go to that event, take time out of their schedule, arrange for the trip down to Oxford from here, get there and then realise that actually tickets have sold out. So it's very important that you ring the brother beforehand and tell him that you'd like tickets and how many you'd like, and he can give you a bit more information on all that. But his number again, I'll give it to you one more time, it's 07852 235 242, and then as Muhammad said, we'll repeat that again at the end. So if you didn't quite catch it there and you want to get pen and paper out or get your phone out towards the end, we'll repeat it before.
Inshallah, we'll do that. Jazakallah, guys. So there you have it, and as if the hadith that we mentioned and the Islamic sentiments that we've been talking about are not enough, then the eat all you can for £20 should certainly hit the spot. But that's not bad.
I got told off by my sister saying eat all you can. It should be eat all you want.
Eat all you want. There you go.
So it becomes a bit of a challenge.
It's true. Okay, so eat all you want. £20. Eat and drink, actually, because you said drinks included as well. So eat and drink, proper full course meal. And just very quickly, I think you might have mentioned it, but this was, you mentioned, it's a specific restaurant in Oxford. Where's the venue roughly? Is it?
That's right. It's the Aziz restaurant. He's got a couple of restaurants in Oxford. He's very well known for anyone who's been to Oxford and has dined out there. But this is a restaurant in the Qassam Stadium, so the home of Oxford United Football Club. Okay. I know there's some rivalry between Reading and Oxford.
Well, there's not much really, because Reading, I think, the Premiership, I don't know where Oxford are, so there shouldn't be anything to worry about. But
found it. But yeah, so it's at there. It's near the football stadium, and actually it's on the correct side of Reading. So as you drive into Oxford, it's before you get to Oxford. So it even cuts down the time further actually. So it's not very far from here at all, and it's a very exclusive restaurant, and it's as we said, eat all you want buffet, and their standard of food is very good. It's very well renowned within Oxford actually.
Okay, Jazakallah. Guys. So we'll move on, inshallah. But just the final point for myself on this. So Jazakallah for coming in and talking to us regarding the efforts of OCFD, inshallah. Long may that continue, and may Allah Azza wa Jal grant goodness going forward. And inshallah, the event on Monday goes well. You've heard some of the details, so I want my final point on this really, and it is my final point. If you think that I'm going on about this, and let's face it, I'm sounding a bit like a Maulana, because this is the time of the year. Well, actually, pretty much the whole year, but this is the time of the year. Well, let's face it, we're going to the masjid and we listen to khutbahs, and of course, understandably, our Maulanas, our Imams, our committee leaders are asking for money for the mosque. But not just that, of course, every other charity, many other people are vying for attention, and that's understandable, and that's there's not an issue, of course. But that also means that from your perspective as the listener, as the people who are donating, inshallah, you sometimes start thinking, well, where do I go? What do I do here? Well, we're not going to give any advice here. We're not going to say pick us above anybody else, because whatever you give in terms of a penny or a pound, whatever it is, inshallah, may that count in your good deeds on Yawm al-Akhirah, inshallah. But the motivation, inshallah, for us is to say that this is a local event. It's something which is happening right now in Syria, the pain and suffering of our brothers and sisters, and because it is an event that's been organised by your pundits, by people that you know, inshallah, we would love to have you attend. And I'm sure, inshallah, you can, as you're thinking about your budgeting, you can stretch that extra £20, and it will, inshallah, it promises to be a fantastic evening. So we look forward to seeing you there. You have the contact details. We will try and repeat them at the end of the show as well, if you're interested in buying tickets. But we need to move on for a bit now, inshallah. So you are listening to, as if you didn't know already, the Armchair Punditz going out to you on One on the Radio 95.6 FM. And we're going to switch the topic slightly. We're going to keep it on Ramadan, but we're going to have a bit of a light-hearted discussion here, because what's the thing that when it comes to Ramadan, it tends to get affected. And I'm not just we could talk about lots of things actually. You could talk about our taqwa and our iman, etc., but I'm talking about something a bit more physical here. And the reason we're going to discuss this is because, and I'm going to keep going back to it, because there is a doctor in the house. Now there's two things we could do. We could have an online surgery, as you mentioned earlier, and that would cause all kinds of problems, and our phone lines would be completely battered, and we would have problems with that. But what we're going to do instead is actually have a discussion, Shabazz, Ahmed, myself, to talk a bit about our health. Okay, especially during the month of Ramadan, and then we can expand it out. Now, I think there was a program, guys, I don't know if you caught it last night, Horizon on the BBC, where they talked about, they discussed essentially some of the benefits of intermittent fasting, and I think one of the things that supposedly it helped was it slowed down aging. So all you sisters out there's your tip, basically, you fast year round and your aging slows down. Actually, with the brothers today as well, all those cosmetics and the amount of money we're spending, forget it, let's just, don't just go to Boots, let's just fast more. But anyway, without going into the science and the facts and the fiction or whatever.
One of the other things they found actually was there were some neuroscientists who, sorry to become all medical, neuroscientists over.
Here we go. Get your dictionaries out.
He was over in the States actually, and so they did this research, and what they found was that actually it regenerates your brain cells by fasting. So they found.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't actually see the program.
I didn't see the program myself. I heard the professor who conducted the research on Radio 4 yesterday, and I'll go back, and if anyone's interested, I would certainly recommend go back on the BBC iPlayer and have a listen.
This is breaking news on the Armchair Punditz. Now this actually causes a problem for me.
Why is that?
And I'll tell you why. Because on the one hand, you're saying that fasting actually regenerates brain cells, and yet the conventional wisdom in our community, handed down from one Mosiji to the next Mosiji, is almonds. Eating almonds helps the brain, so you're going to have a bit of a problem unless you, of course, you fast, and then at iftar time you have a jar load of almonds, and you get the best of both worlds, all the Harlem. But so going back, so the program was talking about some of the benefits of fasting, and it's generally acknowledged, I think, as you just said, guys, that there is some benefit involved for health with respect to fasting. But here's my question to you, right? So from our experience, what we know about our community, do we kind of cancel out some of those benefits in the way that we have our iftar, more so the iftar than the suhoor? I mean, I'm thinking here, and we all know it's the case, I'm thinking about the pakori and the samosi and the chicken legs, and I shouldn't be saying this on air because I'm fasting. If you're listening, then you might be thinking, wow, subhanAllah. or parathas in the morning for suhoor. Some people swear by parathas. I mean, you mentioned Brother Shuja, I believe, earlier, and he is a man who swears by his parathas in in the morning.
Yeah, parathas and cha.
A paratha a day keeps the doctor away or something for him. Allah Alam. Now, I can't have paratha, because if I'm honest with you, when I have paratha, I get up in the morning, I feel a little bit bloated, and it kind of makes me feel very, very strange. But again, I mean, Shujat's not the only one. My youngest brother, he swears by that. He has like a day paratha, a day type situation in the morning. The elder community love it. You know, if you speak to the auntie and uncle, it's like, beta, you know, if you're going to eat, you've got to have your proper paratha and your salan, otherwise how will you get through the day? So let me throw it to you guys. Do we cancel out the effects, do you think, to an extent? I mean, is that a little bit crazy that we go overboard? Because people say that, if anything, we sometimes put on weight. So losing weight, we put on weight, which is kind of ironic, but it's been the case for many people in Ramadan.
It's quite funny. Some of the non-Muslims I work with, they see a lot of the Muslims, they say, oh, he's cheating there because he's putting on weight, whereas you should be losing it. But yeah, I think it's more custom than anything, isn't it?
Right.
My brother doesn't wake up until he smells the paratha. My mum wakes up probably half an hour earlier to get the butter ready and get all the paratha ready for everyone. I think we definitely cancel it out.
Yeah.
But I think maybe as probably our generation gets a bit older, they probably notice the health benefits of not having a paratha in the morning or having fried food all the time. Maybe swapping a samosa for a banana might work. But I think there's a few years in the tank left for the parathas and the samosas, so we won't see them gone just yet.
I don't think they're going to go, no. I just wanted to bring the discussion because obviously we're talking about the health side of things, and then I sometimes wonder, and I think, you know, it's kind of the heart really of the brain, because you know when you're sitting there and it's getting to iftar time and you're a couple of minutes away and the food makes an appearance on the table, and yes, it's not to open the fast with the dates, but let's be honest, the dates kind of pale into the background, because what comes to the foreground is that platter of chicken and the kebabs and everything else. So alhamdulillah, you know, of course it's halal, and of course it's fine. And actually, let's think about it. In reality, a lot of the time we do this when we're inviting guests around, okay? And really, that's, if you think about it in Islam, the concept of being good hosts, the fact that there's reward in opening or giving food for somebody else to open their fast, inshallah. So if you invite them around, you want them to have kind of a mini feast and to give them the best that you can because of the reward that's attached. That's fair enough. But I'm thinking here, it's almost then become a regular thing. So even when you don't have guests and it's just the family or yourself, you kind of tend towards those chicken legs more than you do, I don't know, the fruit or the salad. In fact, most times you go to an iftar, the salad bowl is pretty much as it was, it's still full at the end. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, so Doc, let's ask you, inshallah, I mean, just from your understanding, and a man of medicine, a man of science, inshallah, and maybe a man of paratha, but we don't need to ask you that right now. But what do you think about this? I mean, what Shabazz is saying that we'll probably do cancel it out. My feeling is to an extent we do as well. Do you think, am I making a big deal here, or do you think that, yeah, maybe we need to be a bit more disciplined about our diet during Ramadan?
I think absolutely, actually. And when we talk about the health, the benefits, health benefits of fasting, and we'll refer to that program on Horizon, and actually we'll look at a lot of different scientists where it's quite well known within the scientific community, and what you'll hear the non-Muslim community go on about, actually, when you talk about dieting and so forth, they're going about these detoxes, and that's effectively what they're doing. And one of the reasons for that is when you fast, and you after a sustained period of time, what you start doing is you start using up your fat reserves. And I think it's about 8 hours or so after fasting, you start tapping into your fat reserves, and what that does is it washes away a lot of the toxins within your fat, and that's one of the reasons why even non-Muslims, they'll go on these detoxes, and there's several different detox regimes out there. But we as Muslims obviously fast for another reason. Our reason for fasting obviously is because it's hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these other things are side effects and benefits, and they're all part of the wisdom of fasting. But absolutely what we do is we take away a lot of the benefits, and certainly if you look at these detox programs, or you speak to scientists who say there's benefit to fasting, they won't tell you that to have samosa, to have chicken legs. And there's a great if anyone wants to look at it, there's a Department of Health Ramadan guide. Actually, the Department of Health have actually commissioned a Ramadan guide put together by a group of Muslim doctors, and I think there were some dietitians involved and so forth, different types of doctors as well, all giving their expertise. And if you look through this guide, actually it talks all about the health benefits of fasting, and then it says what not to do. So you get to that page and it says what not to do, what you shouldn't do in Ramadan. You shouldn't eat lots of deep fried foods. You shouldn't eat to excess when you open your fast. You shouldn't eat to excess before you close your fast.
Sure.
And then you look at it and you think, well, actually, that's kind of all the things that our community do.
We're breaking real hearts by saying that, aren't we?
Yeah. But you know, and when we talk about some of the other benefits of fasting, you know, Islamically, and also being aware of what other people go through, and we kind of undo all that, because actually we eat to excess.
Yeah.
And it was great. I remember being at university, and I was in front of I was in the computer center in front of someone who was explaining fasting to their non-Muslim friend. And so it was a brother who was talking to his non-Muslim friend, and so he said, oh, so what happens when you can eat? And the guy, very honestly, the brother, mashallah, at the time I didn't know him, I subsequently got to know him, and he very honestly said, so we shouldn't eat a lot, but what we do is we eat to excess. And what you do is you think, I'm going to be fasting tomorrow, so you keep eating. You probably eat more than you normally would. And I have to hold my hand up here actually and say that although I don't eat to excess, alhamdulillah, what I tend to do is I tend to put on weight during Ramadan, and that for me more is the reason, because I tend not to work out. I tend not to be able to go to the gym or play football because I drink a lot when I work out, and obviously I can't do that during Ramadan, so I tend not to be able to. And unfortunately, with the timings as they are at the moment, the gyms and so forth are closed.
Sure.
There are some gyms out there that
there's quite a few Muslim-friendly gyms now. I was just going to ask you a question. How about physical activity? I've got my younger brother. He's still trying to carry weights. I say trying because he's lowered the amount he can pick up.
Mashallah, he's still doing something. That's good. That's good.
But is that good for him, or can he do it?
I think it's fine if it's an individual thing, so it depends on the level of exercise. And what we wouldn't say is that actually it comes to Ramadan, and unfortunately what we tend to do is we tend to take on a very sedentary lifestyle. So where we might have walked to the shops before, suddenly we're like, oh, you know what, we're fasting, we're going to have to take the car.
Sure.
Or not go at all. That's kind of the mindset that we fall into. So absolutely a certain level of activity is to be encouraged. I guess the only thing to bear in mind is that if it's very intense or rigorous activity, actually you're going to get very thirsty. And your body's going to struggle with that, and there's a risk that you might become dehydrated.
Sure. So I think you're right. It's a bit of a double whammy, you guys, isn't it? Really, it's the fact that you get to Ramadan and you have all the rich food, which helps to kind of cancel out some of the positive effects, and then also the lack of exercise, because you can be in a routine before that. And as you guys have said, you're kind of thinking, well, can I really afford to go jogging 2 or 3 times a week when I am going to feel very dehydrated? And I take it on board. I think it really comes down to each person saying, okay, certainly I can probably be a bit more disciplined, if we're all honest about the food that we're having, inshallah. And secondly, there may be ways around where we can do some exercise. So, okay, maybe don't go jogging, but as the guys have said, maybe you can walk to the shops instead of taking the car, or even not to blow my own trumpet by any means, because I'm not a very fit character at all. Sadly, your presenter is verging on the wrong side, age-wise and also health-wise. But no, I'm not at all. No, just not going to have that for the compliment, mashallah. But in all seriousness, last year, I'm very bad at this year so far. I'm already kind of 2/3 through Ramadan, but last year, one thing that I tried, and it kind of worked for me, was I cut down the amount of jogging I was doing. But what I did was made sure I was still doing some jogging, and then I was jogging closer to iftar time. Okay, so then you know that when you come back from that and you have a quick shower, you're then going to be getting into the realms of getting towards Maghrib and iftar and so forth. But anyway, that worked for me. It may or may not work for you, inshallah.
I just want to recount a story actually. When I was working in the hospital last year, this was last Ramadan, and a lot of brothers out there who play cricket, obviously it's come Ramadan's now during the cricket season, and amazingly some of them carry on playing and will stand in the field. And certainly at the moment when the weather's a bit milder, it's okay, but when it's hot, it's very difficult.
I can imagine.
And last year actually we had someone come into accident emergency, and they came in and they said, I can't feel my legs, and the nursing staff came up to me and told me what was happening, and they said, we've got a guy who's come in, he said he can't feel his legs, and I said, well, what's the rest of the story? And they said, well, actually, he said he's been playing cricket all day. I can't remember if he was a wicketkeeper or not, but he's been playing cricket all day, and he said, I've been fasting as well, so I've not had anything to drink. I said, well, it's likely to just be cramp then. Give him a big jug of water, see what happens in about 20 minutes or so. So I gave him a big jug of water, came back to me in about half an hour and said, you know what, he's left. He said he's fine now.
That's cricket as well. Let's play something really intense like football. But not to say, you cricketers out there, not to say it's not intense, but let's face it, if you're going to bowl the odd over spin and stand at first slip all day, it's not too bad.
It's not a bad
I don't have a problem. I used to play a lot myself, and actually it's fun. And it was on time. I think, is it harder because of the activity in cricket? I'm putting you guys on the line, because certainly with respect to Asian cricket, I played all kinds of cricket, different clubs and so forth. Played with a lot of Pakistani teams in an Asian league when I was very young and started out. And so I wonder which of the two things it is. Is it really the fact that you're fasting that makes it difficult because of the activity, or is it really the case? There's not much activity going on, I'll be honest. So is it more the case that actually the reason fasting is difficult because you don't have your tea? And team with Pakistani teams is a fantastic mix, man. Forget your tuna sandwiches, it was your hardcore samosa, biryani, stuff again, everything we've just been talking about. I reckon that's more the issue that people start to worry.
The other day, actually, and he said, I said to him, "Are you still playing?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, how are you finding it?" And he said, "You know what? It's no problem. But when it comes to drinks, the other team are all having their drinks. That's
when you feel it. They're going to get a little wander around the boundary and pretend you're interested in nature all of a sudden or something else.
Sometimes you have to bring it out for the other team, don't you?
Yeah, subhanallah.
I think now that the weather's a bit more cooler, it's probably a bit easier. But when it was hot those first couple of days, it's definitely a challenge for most people playing sport anyway.
Yeah, I think so. So let me just very quickly put you two on the line. So apologies for doing this. Share with us what you've been having for your suhoor and iftar then. And we've talked about health benefits, but just give us an idea of it. I mean, do you guys go in for the parathas? Do you occasionally? Not really. And what are you having now then, for example? What's your thing for?
This is the first year I've broke with family tradition.
Ooh,
I tend to do that nowadays as well. Probably with age.
That's what we like to hear.
All I'm having is dates, water and cereal.
Okay, so
I get the funny looks every morning.
Yeah.
So look what he's doing. He's outside, isn't he?
He's a black sheep in the family. Yeah. Okay.
So, but alhamdulillah, touch wood, it's been serving me well. Whereas when everyone else wakes up, they're all touching their stomach, thinking, "Oh, how am I going to get through work today?" I get on my bike and do my 5 miles to work, whereas they're struggling along.
Yeah, mashallah. Amar, for you?
Nowhere near as dedicated as Baz, but I must say, certainly for suhoor, I tend not to have a lot. I certainly can't have pranta. I haven't been able to for many years actually.
Okay.
But what I tend to have is probably a couple of croissants, maybe some yogurt. I drink quite a lot for suhoor actually, because one of the things I always find is in the line of work I'm in, I do a lot of talking, and so I get very dry mouths during the course of the day. So I tend to drink a lot, but actually that's probably about it. I certainly can't eat pranta.
Alhamdulillah.
And my mum and dad's, mums have that natural instinct.
They do.
Oh, our son's going to be fasting tomorrow. He's got, you're going to have nothing to eat all day. Eat as much as you can now. And sometimes it's because of saying to my mum, you know what, I think I'll be okay.
No, this is it. This is my experience as well. I mean, when I'm in Oxford, obviously, it is similar to you guys. So I have a bit of cereal, croissants, maybe a bit of toast, inshallah, and try and drink as much water as I can. Maybe some orange juice because I'm very partial to juice. But when I go back to my parents' places, I was at the weekend, and it's exactly the point that you brothers have mentioned, is that you've got to have the paratha and the salad or whatever. So I have to own up to the audience and say that, yeah, I've had a couple of paratha this Ramadan so far. I'm trying not to have too many more, but as I said, I'm not a massive fan anymore. I can't really resist the paratha as such, but when you have it in the morning, it can really, it has an effect.
No, I'm not either. That's probably why.
Generally I can. And let me tell you, the paratha, you want paratha, you have paratha in Lahore. Well, I actually had paratha in Lahore for suhoor. It was, don't ask what I was doing, we're out and about at that time with some of the brothers. Early hours, it was during the month of Ramadan, many years ago now. And the roadside places in Pakistan are the best. And they actually open at that time, some of them, right, for suhoor as well, obviously, because everyone's fasting. And we had a very simple meal, we had something to drink, and we had paratha, and freshly made paratha, and yogurt. And subhanAllah, it's one of the best suhoor meals I've ever had. Yeah, it's fantastic. Alright. So generally I'm good with paratha. There, maybe because in Pakistan the heat and you sweat it out and it kind of is okay. Yep. Here, let's face it, you can feel pretty bloated after you've had a paratha or two in the morning. But alhamdulillah, what about porridge? Because there's this bit of a myth here that porridge is good.
Isn't there? I've never tended to go for it.
Yeah. Porridge earlier in iftar actually. My brother tends to have a lot of porridge actually.
Okay.
So I'll be honest, if I have not a lot to eat, I don't notice.
That's strange. Yeah, that's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
The less you eat, the better you feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
one of the other things is because the time between iftar and suhoor is only a matter of hours.
Exactly.
Hours. And on the large part, we tend to have a relatively healthy meal at home. So yesterday, I think we had lasagna and spaghetti, which is a very non-Pakistani dish at all. but actually, when you have get invited around to iftars, and then you can't help it because that's what's on the table. You've got samosa and so forth. So the only times I've had big meals actually is when I've eaten out.
Is that your excuse then, Ahmed?
That's my excuse.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
You feel a bit obliged to have something. Yeah. And the other thing is your host tends not to like it if you've only taken one samosa or something.
Porridge. I mean, porridge is a funny one for me because obviously the idea behind that is I think oats are very slow burning and they're good for you.
Yeah.
And whether my metabolism is a bit odd or whether I'm just a bit odd, probably both. But whenever I have dalia, I have porridge in the morning. I actually feel hungry during the day, so I'm not sure about. There's some funny science going on there.
Probably psychological.
Allah. But what I will say we'll close this bit of the discussion out, inshallah. What I will say is, Dr. Ahmed, mashallah, has invited us for iftar tonight. So, despite the fact we've been talking a lot about health benefits and so forth, I hope that continues from after today, inshallah, because we're looking forward to, no pressure, Doc, but we're looking forward to a benefit tonight, inshallah.
No, there's no spaghetti.
Spaghetti, alhamdulillah, that's fine, inshallah. Data and water, alhamdulillah. But, jazakallah, guys, that's interesting discussion, inshallah. What I want to do now, actually, what I'll do before we go on is I just want to read out again the numbers for you, not the numbers for the charity fund, the charity iftar next week, but rather the numbers for the studio if you want to get in touch. So 0118 975 8300, 0118 975 8300, and text into 07909 567 527. So in case you want to share with us your thoughts regarding the discussion so far. Let me move on to the final part of the show, inshallah. It's going to be on the health theme, but I want to talk a bit beyond Ramadan, okay, because there's some things that affect or seemingly affect our community more, perhaps than they do the community at large. And the two things that we always seem to come across, we always seem to hear about, are heart disease within the Armchair community and diabetes. One of the things that, again, I mean, it's nice that, you know, pundits can help correct me on this, but one of the things that I hear a lot is that some of these things, there's a very strong effect down to your genes, essentially. It's hereditary, okay, so that has an effect. And one of the grumblings within our community is that if you go to a doctor and whatever your symptoms are, essentially, and don't take offense on behalf of Dr. Siyama, but whatever the symptoms are, you speak to your doctor, sometimes they can be very dismissive if you mention early on the fact that you have, let's say, diabetes in the family. They'll say, oh, right, okay, so some of these symptoms can be explained because your father or so-and-so is diabetic, and they almost seem to assume that therefore you will become diabetic and start thinking about what you should be doing as opposed to really analysing. No, I'm not, I'm just generalising here, but let's get this out here. Have you guys heard about that? Would you agree with me that things like heart disease, diabetes are very much within our community? And is it fair to say that genes do play a big factor? Are there other things that we should be looking at as well, inshallah? Whoever wants to kick off, I mean...
let the medic kick off.
Let the medic kick off. Okay, so
medically speaking, there's no doubt that actually there's a higher incidence of heart disease and diabetes within our community. It's not fully understood, but actually a lot of it seems to, they think, is down to our metabolism.
Right.
Part of it may well be down to our diet and the lifestyle. So we when we were back at home in the fields, we used to, in the Pind, we used to be eating heavy ghee and butter
Sure.
dishes, but actually we used to be working it off. And now we've come here, we don't seem to be doing that. But even allowing for that, there does seem to be a genetic element to our incidence of diabetes and heart disease in our families.
How much does our diet play into it, and our lack of physical activity once you're past a certain age?
I think it does. It does. I think it's difficult to quantify, but what I would say is that we know that even if you had so if we just use the example of a Pakistani and a Caucasian person in this community, allowing for the fact that there'll be some of the listeners who are neither of those, so I apologize for that, but just being very specific here, we know that actually you can have two people of exactly the same diet and exercise tolerance, but with a Pakistani and a Caucasian, the Pakistani needs to be skinnier to have the same chance of developing diabetes. So if everything else is the same, their BMI is the same and so forth, that actually they'll have a higher risk of developing diabetes.
And sorry, and Doc, just because we're on this point, so is this something you're saying, is this speculative, or is it based on tried and tested data and analysis being carried out?
There's good data for this,
right,
and what you'll find is, so the BMI, some of our listeners will have heard of it, some of them not. The BMI stands for body mass index, and what that is a ratio between your height and your weight, and generally speaking, the larger your BMI, the unhealthier it is. So and there's some allowances for that, because some people, like anorexics and so forth, they will have a very low BMI, which is equally unhealthy, but the normal range for a good BMI is anywhere between 19 to 25. I'm just beyond that, unfortunately. Very, very slightly, which would be a shame to hear, I know. But actually what you find is you don't become obese until you get to 35. You now have a separate class which is called pre-obese once your BMI hits over 30. And in the hospital we see some ridiculous BMIs. But just returning to the serious point, actually what you'll find is that if you have 19 to 25 is the normal values, but actually for someone of Asian descent, they now say that to have the same risk of diabetes as the non-Muslim population, what we need to do is we need to have a BMI of 23 or so. So actually we need to have a lower BMI, which means that Absolutely, the communities we live in, our diets are worse, our exercise levels are worse. But that actually, to overcome that, we have to be even better than that.
Right.
We have to become even better than that. So we need to make sure that we bring our BMIs, our weights down even further. The other thing I think we'll find is that in our communities there is a higher risk of heart disease and so forth. And one of the big things is blood pressure. And what the difficulty with that is that the medication for blood pressure is lifelong. So once you've started medication for blood pressure, it's lifelong. And what we'll find is that a lot of people, when they don't have their medication, they don't feel any difference, because a lot of the changes that happen within the body happen at a deeper level. So the first that people who don't like taking their blood pressure medication, or who have high blood pressure, it's called hypertension medically speaking, the first they'll know, the first serious side effect they'll have is when they've had a heart attack or a stroke. And I have this problem with my father, actually. Unfortunately, my father has high blood pressure. He also has diabetes, unfortunately. So I'm always going on at him, Dad, do this, do this, do this. And he says, why? I feel fine.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems, actually, is that people feel fine, and it's not until they have these big incidences that actually that's the first they know that, that there's the first symptom.
I was going to say, how do you get high blood pressure? Is it through stress, work, or do you just something that you just get?
So there's a lot of different reasons, or a lot of different risk factors.
Because it is common in
oh, absolutely. I think you know any Uncle G who's
BP
50 and high blood pressure and diabetes, they've done very well.
That's right.
But there's a lot of different risk factors for causing high blood pressure. But one of the underlying pathophysiological changes actually is that the arteries become much harder. And they lose that ability to relax and constrict as required, and so actually your baseline blood pressure just becomes much higher. And one of the reasons you get heart attacks and so forth is that same process happens within the arteries that supply the heart. So the first you know is that you've had a heart attack because the blood supply to the heart's been cut off.
Yeah.
And the very lucky ones, alhamdulillah, are the ones who have that as a warning and then have a heart attack but survive it, or actually have symptoms suggesting a heart attack, something we call angina, which is similar to heart attack, but it ceases when you stop exercising. So these are the kind of things that we as a community need to grapple with, and I think a lot of people don't really understand it. And one of the other very obvious misconceptions we see in our community is, and it's well documented actually, that there's two things that are well documented. One is that the Pakistani community, when they're told to cut out sugar from their diet, will for the large part try to do that, but one thing they won't do is cut out sugar from their tea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's blasphemy, I think, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What do they say? Tea's not tea.
Tea's made with the sugar. That's the thing. That's the problem.
Uncle came to my house. He said, I said to Uncle, how many sugars would you like? He said 8. And I said, Uncle, that's sugar with tea on the side.
Well, of course, the opposite of that is somebody who manages to cut out the sugar from the tea. My father's diabetic, and also a heart patient, has been for a very long time. So he very early on, mashallah, was able to control his diet as per your suggestion, Amr. And we used to have pikija, so without the genie. It's a bit odd in their wider family. Even if we go to Pakistan, even now, they forget and they make the tea with the sugar, then they have to apologize all the time. So this guy's a bit odd, he's having his tea without sugar. But even in that situation, the problem that I find is that sometimes people who have that discipline and don't have sugar in the tea tend to then have a plate full of mithai with their tea, so you kind of make vendors obsolete in my mind.
Well, one of the other problems actually is that certainly those who have diabetes, and my dad is a classic example of this, I don't think he'll mind me saying, or he might, inshallah he won't, is that he will eat to excess until his appointment with the nurse is coming up, and he'll say a week beforehand, oh, you know what, I've got an appointment with the nurse coming up, I'm going to cut out all sugar.
That's right.
So he won't have any mithai in the week beforehand, and what he doesn't realise, and I've explained to him on several occasions actually, is that there's a blood test that you can do which shows how much sugar you've had in the last 3 months. So actually that's kind of besides the point. The other thing that is very well documented actually is for our women folk, the women within communities. It's very well documented that where they have problems and they need to restrict their diet, unfortunately, because the man of the house or the children say, actually, Ammiji, if you need to have salad, you have salad, but I still want my biryani and samosa and so forth. And obviously then it's very difficult to be cooking that type of food and not cooking in yourself. And that's very well documented that for female Asians actually, not just Pakistani Muslims but also Indians, it's very, very difficult for them to do that. And on diabetes basically we think, oh, you know what, the doctor will give us some medication.
Yeah.
Well, the first problem with that is no medication is without side effects.
Yeah.
The other problem is that actually looking at the length of your life, and obviously there's an element of qadr of Allah in this, but you also need to tie your camel. You still need to ensure that you look after your own health. Medically speaking, there's only two things that will increase or will stop your life being shortened just purely by disease, and all the tablets in the world, actually all they do is they control your symptoms, but don't actually change the what we call mortality, so actually the risk of you dying. And the two things that do are diet and exercise.
Sure. And that's the two things that we want to discuss, inshallah. And you start to lose me, Doc, if I'm very honest with some of this high level terminology, and you're waxing lyrical about some very big words. I can't even pronounce some of the words, but no, jazakallah for that insight, inshallah. It's very much appreciated. And I wanted to actually raise some of these points deliberately, because yes, we talked about Ramadan and we talked about the food, and I think that's as we mentioned, as part and parcel of us being aware of our health, inshallah, in this month and at all times. You also mentioned your father, actually, and
apparently he's listening. My sister.
I was just about to say, right, and uncle is listening, and I was going to say, you said that uncle might get upset. I for one certainly hope uncle doesn't get upset, otherwise that iftar at your place tonight is off. So we're going to be in real trouble. So we're going to have to go and find a restaurant somewhere and probably sleep out in Reading for a bit just to avoid his anger. But no, alhamdulillah, I'm sure he doesn't mind. It is an issue. I mentioned my father. Many of us know people in the community, elders, and now it seems, middle age, getting younger, this is a real problem for us. We talked about the diet. As you said, this issue never seemed to exist so much before in Pakistan, although the diet was very similar. And I think what's happened is, quite right, you said the issue of exercise and physically working out, looking after the mal dangar, etc. You're out there in the field, it's hot, and then you've kind of imported that same diet over here, and you're not doing those activities. So I buy into that argument, Ahmad, and I can see where you're coming from on that, inshallah. The second point, Shabazz raised it, and let's just very quickly, because we're running out of time, discuss that, and that is the issue of exercise, because I think there's a Sikh chap who's almost 100 or 90 odd. He was in the news, right, running marathons, exactly, been in the news, and I just think it's fantastic that he can do that, and it's an amazing thing. But I'll be very honest, I don't think you catch any of our uncles or granddads or anybody putting on the pair of night trainers and saying, well, I'm going for a 20-mile jog somewhere. That obviously we're messing around, we're exaggerating, but do you think it is the case that specifically in our elder community, because the youngsters, they do their football, they do their gyms, and they do whatever, but the elder community, even simple things like maybe taking a short bike ride or walking, they would prefer, and again, all the uncles and aunties, everyone listening out there, not in any way to stereotype, mainly because they mean chittar for me, but basically because I don't want to do that. But my experience, and maybe some of the listeners can relate to this, the pundits, I'm sure,
let's chase that already.
I won't get you chased around, but we can just lock the doors and have to do iftar in here. I think there's some kajus in the corner, so we're fine for today. But my experience, let's see if the pundits relate to this, is sometimes the elders are more kind of, I prefer to stay at home and read the Jung and the Nation. I prefer to watch the AOR news and the Geo 24/7, even as the same news being repeated again and again, and nothing's really going to change unless you come back after a couple of days. I mean, events move fast in the world, but not that fast. But they prefer to do that. And is that a fair point? And do we need to be encouraging our elder generation to say, look, even simple exercise, do it, because as you just said, Amr, it has a big impact on your health.
Absolutely. So the Department of Health guidelines on this is that you should be doing half an hour of exercise, and that's quite intense exercise, such that you're breaking out into a sweat, and that's half an hour, approximately 3 to 4 times a week. And actually, when we look at it and look at elders in our community, they're not doing that. They might be doing something very short, so they might walk down to the shops and back, but they're certainly not doing half an hour. There's a lot of different reasons why that might be. So certainly you get to a certain age and you might develop arthritis. There's a lot of people out there who have aches and joint pains. But actually, that's not that much different from the non-Muslim community or the non-Pakistani community. So I don't think we necessarily have an excuse there. One of the other things I hear a lot is we live in a very cold country.
Okay,
it's a Muslim, right?
Yeah, true, right. It's freezing.
So in the summer we might want to go out, we might go for walks and so forth.
Achha.
But in the winter, from about September through till May of next year, actually it's too cold to leave the house.
Yeah.
Or if we do, what we'll do is we'll take a car journey. So I think there's a lot of reasons out there why we don't. But I think it's a fair point to say that the levels of physical exercise within our community, and this is being very, very much generalizing, which I think to some degree we're allowed to do, actually are a lot lower than the non-Asian community. And there's going to be a lot of different factors for that. And part of it is going to be that actually, it was part of what you did for work back home when people were there. You either just did work, and the work was cutting the fields and being in the fields all day, and that just one of the side effects was that actually you ended up losing weight or doing exercise.
Yeah, you were burning those calories naturally.
Absolutely. Even just with the heat. My dad, alhamdulillah, he was in Pakistan for the best part of a year. He just returned relatively recently, and in a year, alhamdulillah, he lost 4 stone.
Wow, okay,
4 stone. So he did really, really well. Now that 4 stone, I was saying to him yesterday, actually, he's starting to pile back on. Because now
I think Ahmed's going to get even better reception.
That's honestly, Uncle, I think Ahmed's trying to drop you in and say maybe you need to be taking a visit back to Pakistan sometime soon. My advice is take him with you, alhamdulillah. I mean,
That's a very dangerous thing to do.
Well, this is what I'm saying, inshallah. I'm sure there's some people lined up Pakistan. We won't go down that route, inshallah. You know what I mean.
But one of the things is that actually when you're in Pakistan, it's hotter. You'll end up walking. You'll take public transport. Or you'll walk places. Even just walking from your house to the fields and so forth. You'll end up doing a lot more exercise. And in this country, for some reason, we have a reluctance to do that. Whether it is the weather or not, I'm not sure. Because when the weather's relatively well, we still like to take the car. And I think it's something that we need to do as a public campaign actually amongst our community is to try and encourage high levels of exercise.
Okay, I think we all agree with that, inshallah. And just so we've got last couple of minutes for the next show, so I'm going to have to wrap up, inshallah. You've been listening to, and you are still listening to, Armchair Punditz on 95.6 One Ummah Radio. The very last couple of points I wanted to get Shabazz and Ahmed's views on before we complete the discussion is also the effect of occupations, right? Historic and current, and I'm sure that has a part to play. And I'm thinking here is, if you think about our older generation again, a lot of them came over in the 60s and 70s, and they were straight into the factory type of work. And I'm sure, from my personal experience anyway, that's had a very detrimental effect on their health as they've got older, because they were doing that manual labour and so forth. And if you look at some of the current generation people, many of our brothers are working in restaurants where we've talked about being in a restaurant is a very bad place when you're fasting because the food's there. But if you're in a restaurant generally day in day out, and then the tendency then is to have maybe a bad diet, and of course taxi ranks. And all respect to our brothers that are taxi drivers, but name me a taxi driver. I suppose there are going to be some. I'm just being silly here, but name me taxi drivers who make an effort after they finish their shift and park the car and then say, I'm going to go and hit the gym. Because sadly, it seems because the nature of their job is they're sitting down all the time, that has an effect as well on their health. Is that a fair point? Just to finish on, do you agree with that, or am I exaggerating the occupational side of things?
I think it is to an extent, but I think sometimes in our community we use that as an excuse. So actually, if you look at the wider community, there'll be in similar professions, and we use this as an excuse as why we shouldn't exercise. But like Brother Shabazz was saying, a few moments ago, that when he goes to work, he cycles to work, and mashallah, was it 5 miles to and from work?
Yep, 5 miles back and forth.
There you go. So mashallah, I mean, I'd be honest, certainly when I'm fasting I couldn't do that. I've done it in the past where I've worked and I've cycled 3 miles to and from
work. I think I agree with that. I mean, it's an easy excuse to have, isn't it, to say I've been working all day. The last thing I want to do is go outside in the cold and exercise.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think they also advise is that you don't necessarily have to do the exercises as a specific form of exercise. So it could just be that actually instead of taking the bus home from work, you walk on a particular day, and so your journey might be half an hour or so. Similarly, if you work, certainly the hospital I work in, there's a lot of stairs. So rather than using the lift, if you use the stairs more often, simple things like that can mean that actually you can build exercise into your daily routine, so that it's not seen as exercise, it's just seen as part of your routine. And one of the side effects is that actually you end up having burning of a lot of those calories.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, Jazakallah guys. Okay, so Jazakallah Health Punditz, inshallah, to Shabazz, to Ahmad. Very quickly, inshallah, we're going to wrap up. And the very last thing is, as we promised you early in the show, is just to give you those numbers. So I just want to remind you, so Monday evening, next Monday, 13th, inshallah, 6:30 the doors open. And again, not Pakistani timing, proper timing, 6:30 doors open, 6:45 inshallah. It's a charity iftar, raising money for brothers and sisters in Syria, organised by the brothers, by the pundits, and Ahmed will now read out that number inshallah. So the brother was Shajat Hussain, is the contact name, and if you could just give the number on air, please.
That's right, so I'll give the number again. It's 07852 235 242. I'll give that again inshallah if people are just getting out their pens or their phones. So that number is 07852 235 242. And if you have any questions about the event itself or just want more information, then again you can ring that number. Brother Shajat will happily give you more information and look to give some tickets to you. So that number one more time and finally is 07852 235 242.
Jazakallah Amr, inshallah. Jazakallah for listening to the Armchair Pundits. Do try and make an effort, inshallah. We'll be there on Monday as well. I myself will be attending the event, so may see you there, inshallah. But once again, it's been fantastic. It's been a long time, I know, since the last show, inshallah. Hopefully, all being well, after the blessed month of Ramadan is over, we will try and come back in again and be back on our regular slot. But for now, inshallah, I would like to say assalamu alaikum to all of you, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to the pundits.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And inshallah, we will see you soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to 95.6 One Ummah FM, sponsored by After the Accident, 24 hours a day. Call us on 0118 926 9993. 131 Wokingham Road, Reading. It's no accident people use after the accident.